brilliant young man, a quantum physicist, theoretical physicist. Michio has come up with what he considers to be a possibility of 4 different kinds of advanced civilizations. Type 1, 2, 3, and 4. You, by the way, are members of a 0-0 type civilization. Not that you didn't know that, but you haven't quite reached type 1 yet. And the conclusion many of us have reached is that we're looking at the results of at least a type 2 civilization. Now, how do these guys out there look upon us? Really do. How do you think they think of us? I have a pretty good idea because I've been getting some legitimate information from American military and scientific people who have not only met some of them from out there, but are working alongside of them in United States government national laboratories like Sandia, Los Alamos, Brookhaven National Laboratory in Long Island, which is one of the most super secret laboratories. Anyhow, we have scientists and military guys that have been working alongside of some of those dudes, and they are in our midst. When I retired, we knew of 4 different groups, and they were all humanoid. But they were all not the kind of guys who could walk up and down the street on a Saturday afternoon without being seen or responded to. But one of the groups of 4 looks exactly like us in the sense that it could be sitting here in this auditorium next to you and you wouldn't know it. Next to you in an airplane or a restaurant or a theater. They're in our midst, guys. This one group particularly is in our midst. And apparently since 1954, when Ike met them at Muroc Air Force Base in California, they've been working with us, trying to help us make that transition from adolescence into adulthood. And why are they doing that? Well, apparently this is the same group that had a hand in engineering our genetics 10,000, 100,000 years ago. And if you want a little history on that subject, read Zecharia Sitchin, which I suspect most of you are familiar with. His stories are shockingly accurate in the fact they literally tell the essential story of our beginnings. They translate these ancient cuneiform tablets from Sumer. Zecharia is not the only one. There was a brilliant Englishman by the name of Christian O'Brien who went home a year or so ago. Christian O'Brien wrote a beautiful, unbelievable, powerful book called The Genius of the Few. If you can ever find that somewhere, get a copy. Christian O'Brien said essentially the same thing Zecharia has said. We were genetically engineered, and they've been coming and going, and they've been in our midst for a hell of a long time. And somebody said to Sitchin one time, Zecharia, when are they coming back? And he said, whatever made you think they ever left? And I don't think they did ever leave. Now, again, this is, I think, a little shocking information here. At least it shocked the hell out of me. Now, when I was in Germany at a conference some years ago, a Russian cosmonaut by the name of Marina Popovich handed out a few copies to me and Michael Hesseman, another researcher, friend of mine, that the Soviet Phobos mission took on Mars when it was out there 15, 20 years ago. The Soviets sent this fantastic mission to Mars. They named it Phobos 2 because Phobos 1 is one of the moons of Mars. 12 miles in diameter, So they named their space mission Phobos 2, and they took a whole bunch of pictures. One of the pictures they took, which Michael Hesseman published in his magazine, is apparently a city the size of Chicago under the surface in Mars, generating an enormous amount of heat, because this photo was taken in the infrared. As I said, it's in German at the bottom here, but Michael had published it in his magazine. From Phobos 2, a city under the surface of Mars the size of Chicago. You can see practically, the blocks, the streets, so on. So yes, Virginia, there are Martians, and yes, they are on Mars, and some of them are probably here, because we apparently don't look that different from each other. But you'll never see this published in an American newspaper or an American magazine. Had to be published in Germany by Michael Hesseman. Phobos took another picture. While it was in orbit around Mars, and the story I was told is that they literally planned to land on Phobos, the moon. Well, they never got there. Because while they're in orbit around Mars, this thing came up from the surface of Mars, gigantic in size, and apparently bumped Phobos 2, knocked it out of orbit, and down it went. So there's somebody up there who says, no. You can come and peek, but then you can't stay very long, and you're not going to take that many pictures. We're not going to allow it. Okay. I think that does my photographs for you this afternoon. I don't know where the hell the turn-off button on this thing is. Maybe Bill can find it. Anyhow, I'll leave it. Now, as I said to you, I'm ticked off. I have this pissed off roster, which is a work of joy and pleasure for me. As I said, politicians at the top, particularly the United States Congress, they're a bunch of clowns. They literally run a circus back there. Theologians are right next, below. Forgive me, I'm not anti-religious. I simply don't like religion because it tends to divide people. It separates people. My God is better than your God. My book is better than your book. My story is truer than your story. And so on, and so on, and so on. So I'm not religious at all. I've studied them all. I've studied Hinduism, I've studied Islam, I've studied Judaism. I was raised a Christian. I've studied Christianity. I consider the young man from Galilee my best friend. But that's another story that I don't think we have time for me to get into. I went through a series of hypnotic past life regressions a number of years ago. And one of the lives that I discovered was in Galilee 2,000 years ago with him. So I say he was my best friend and he still is my best friend. Anyhow, I'm not anti-religious. I respect the people who are sincere and honest about it. But it does tend to separate people. It divides people. And I try to promote the concept of a spiritual approach to life. If you human beings had the slightest idea of what you are, my God, you're incredible. You are all of you masterpieces. You really need to know what Yogananda said. You need to reach a state of self-realization when you recognize that within you burns a spark of pure divinity. And it don't matter what church you go to, or what language you speak, or what politics you are, or what color your skin